I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody, to tonight's meeting of the Penn-Harris-Madison Board of School Trustees. I want to say a very special welcome to all of our guests here within the boardroom. We also have a number of guests, including students and parents, who have assembled outside the boardroom. And I also want to say a very special thank you and welcome to the individuals who are joining us on our live feed. We hope that if you're home and joining us via live feed, that you and your families are safe from the storm. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. It is 7:17 p.m. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Board members, do you have any questions, additions, or changes to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, does the administration?
The administration has no changes.
Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Any opposed vote nay. Motion carries by a vote of 6-0. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. Board members, do you have any additions or changes to the minutes from the July 20, 2020 executive session, the July 20, 2020 regular board meeting, or the July 29, 2020 executive session? Hearing none, is the administration?
The administration has no changes.
Then do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the July 15, 2019 executive session and regular board meeting of the July 29, 2020 executive session as presented? Second. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed vote nay. That motion also carries by a vote of 6-0. Next up on our agenda time is the consent agenda. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley, Board of Trustees. Welcome, everyone. We're delighted that you're here. The administration recommends approval of the 6 items appearing on the consent agenda. Also, to note, appearing on the personnel report under certified staff are 5 retirements. Judy Scarbeck, teacher at Schmucker Middle School, retired effective July 31st, 2020, after 30 years of teaching at Schmucker. Wonderful teacher. We're going to miss her. Peggy Clark, music teacher at Bittersweet Elementary School, retired July 22nd, 2020, after 34 years of service. Her music programs were phenomenal. She really kept the kids engaged and they had a lot of fun. Alicia Conrad, teacher at Moran Elementary School, retired August 5th, 2020, after 32 years of service. She made an impact at Mary Frank, Horizon, and Moran. We wish her the best, and she did a phenomenal job. Krista Barton was a health and physical education teacher at Penn High School, retired effective August 4th, 2020, following 27 fabulous years. Did a great job teaching the entire time at Penn High School. Jeff Reed, English language arts teacher at Penn High School. We were retiring at the end of the 2020-2021 school year after 34 years of service. He began his career at Penn High School in 1987, spent his entire career there. Jeff did a great job also. So on behalf of the board administration, we wish Judy, Peggy, Alicia, Chris, and Jeff the very best for their upcoming retirements.
Thank you, Dr. Thacker. Board members, any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented by Dr. Thacker?
I so move.
Second. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed vote nay. Hearing none, the consent agenda carries by a unanimous vote of 6-0. We certainly wish Mrs. Clark, Conrad, Martin, and Mr. Reed the best in their future adventures. And we'll move right along to our instruction action items. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley and Board of Trustees. Tonight's a very, very special and historic action item. We have the recommendation of the appointment of a new diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. At the July 1st, 2020 special meeting, the board approved the creation of a position of a new diversity, equity, and inclusion officer for the Penn-Harris-Madison School Corporation. I'm absolutely delighted to recommend Mr. Derek White for appointment as the new diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. Mr. White is currently an assistant principal at Penn High School. He has been an assistant principal at Riley High School, John Adams High School, was principal at Navarre Intermediate School for a decade. He's been a dean, he's been a teacher, social studies, special education teacher. He's been a mentor to others. He's a graduate of the Indiana Principals Leadership Academy, and he's had a lot of work with cultural proficiency with Dr. Ken Hardy and a host of others. but he's been a leader and mentor and developer of people his entire career. In fact, in 1995, he was awarded special recognition of the Martin Luther King Center Youth Mentor Award. So we're delighted to have Mr. Derek White as a recommendation to be hired as our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Thacker. Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Thacker? Hearing none, then do I have a motion to approve the appointment of Mr. Derek White as a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the Penn-Harris-Madison School Corporation?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Any opposed vote nay. Motion carries unanimously by a vote of 6-0. Mr. White, welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Thacker, Board President Riley, members of the Board of Trustees, and ESC Cabinet. It is truly an honor to be named the PHM Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. Thank you, Dr. Thacker, and members of the Board for answering the clarion call for change from a group of passionate Penn alumni students and current students. Your willingness to actively listen to their collective voices and take action will help ensure we will have a positive, healthy learning environment that embraces and celebrates diversity, equity, equality, and inclusion for all PHM students. To borrow a theme from the wonderful world of Disney, our purpose is to diligently work to create magic where everyone is raving about the excellence that is happening throughout the PHM school district. We were very fortunate to read a book last year at our administrative retreat. I'd like to thank Dr. Short for introducing this book to us. And Lee Cockrell is the author. And RAVE, the acronym for RAVE is Respect, Appreciate, Value Everyone. So moving forward, that's what we're going to do. We're going to respect, appreciate, and value everyone, every student, no matter if they come from Covington Shores or they live in Village Green. In closing, every student in our school district has a story that needs to be heard and valued. I truly believe moving forward that our diversity of our experience will be our strength. I look forward to the management we're about to create together for our PHM students, families, and staff. Thank you.
Fabulous job, Mr. White. We're so proud of you. And as I think of inclusion, is there anybody you'd like to include in the recognition tonight?
Oh, yes. My wonderful wife, Jane.
This way you'll have your holiday card early.
I guess they like it. Everybody's
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Again, Mr. White, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you most especially for answering the call. We are so excited to have you in this position and look forward to working with you and hearing from you as your work in this role begins. So we'll move on to our next item, which is a report on the formation of the Superintendent's Advisory Council. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley and Board of Trustees. You know, I'm so excited about the Superintendent's Advisory Council. Last year we had a council that was working and focused on social emotional learning, safety in the schools. We talk about physical safety, psychological safety. And this year we're going to be focused on diversity. So the timing is perfect tonight. Mr. White's going to be an instrumental part of this, but we're going to make sure that we continue with our vision of excellence, and one of our major goals is to value and celebrate diversity. And we're going to ensure that as we're working with this, that we're looking for ways to make sure that we address racial injustice, to end discrimination, and be anti-racist. So leading the report tonight on the plans of the Superintendent's Advisory Council is Dr. Jennifer Sears. And Dr. Sears served as the chairperson last year. She's the chairperson this year. So she's going to be introducing this, and Mr. Aaron Lesky is the vice chairperson. So I'm going to turn this over right now to Dr. Sears, and she's going to give an update on how people can participate and some of the things that we're hoping to accomplish. And our work is never done. This is a high priority, and we're going to make a difference with our leadership. So welcome, Dr. Sears.
Thank you. President Riley, Dr. Thacker, and members of the board, it's my honor to present to you an overview of the Superintendent's Advisory Council for the 2021 school year that will focus on diversity. So the purpose of the Superintendent's Advisory Council is to serve as an advisory council that will focus on gathering feedback and input from council members and work to achieve district goals related to valuing and celebrating diversity, as well as working to eliminate racial injustices and discrimination. In addition to the SAC, the 3 middle schools and the high school will also have a task force that will be part of their school improvement plans teams. They will have more of a school focus, while the SAC will have a district focus. In terms of members, the SAC will include parents, guardians, community members, PHM staff, and of course, Dr. Thacker, students and teachers or other staff will be appointed. We would like our members, of course, to be ambassadors for PHM. Parent, guardian, and community members are welcome and encouraged to apply. Interested parents, guardians, or community members would need to complete an application for the SAC. Applications can be found online at PHM's website or picked up from the ESC. Submission for their application materials can be done by mailing the application materials to the ESC, dropping them off, or emailing them directly to me. Once all the applications are received, the chairperson, the vice chair, Mr. White, as well as a group of administrators for the SAC will review the applicants using a rubric and then make decisions on membership. Parents or guardians would need to be a parent or guardian of a current PHM student. We will work with the principals to find parents or guardians so that we make sure we have representation from each township, as well as non-resident status families. There may also be ad hoc members that will be invited by Dr. Thacker. As we look at applicants, information that will be considered for membership as a parent would be, again, representation from the 3 districts, as well as NRS, as well as knowledge specific to diversity, which will also be important for our community members. The SAC will meet 1 time per month on designated Mondays from 6:30 to 8 o'clock p.m., with the exceptions of months where there's conflicts due to board meetings or other calendar district events or holidays. And those months are January and April. If meetings need to be canceled due to inclement weather, we'll follow PHM's closing schedule. And due to COVID restrictions, some of our meetings may need to be virtual as opposed to in person. By design, there will be a feedback loop of information. The principals for the school task force / school improvement plans committees will keep the SAC chair and vice chair informed of all feedback, school improvement plan goals, activities, and outcomes. This information will be shared with Dr. Thacker, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, and then the board will be kept up with updates as well. In terms of next steps, the application window opens tomorrow, August 11th, and is open until August 28th at 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon. Then once we have all the applications, we'll review those, and then we'll notify members via email by September 9th, 2020, and then our first Superintendent's Advisory Council will be September 14th. So we are really looking forward to this very important initiative for our district, and I want to thank you all for the opportunity and the honor to be a part of this. And at this time, I'd like to ask if you have any questions.
Board members, any questions, comments for Dr. Sears?
You mentioned that, that the current, people on the committee could stay. Was that decided that would they have that opportunity to continue on if they are interested? Applicants from last year, or do you want them to reapply?
I think we talked about what we decided is having them reapply,
Okay,
but they wouldn't have to necessarily submit like their 2 letters of recommendation to make it a little bit easier,
Right.
because we'll have all the information.
great, thank you.
Is that okay?
Other questions, comments? I just want to express some gratitude to both the administration and to my colleagues on the board. When this matter of racial injustice systemically was brought to our attention a couple months ago, the administration and the board swung into action very quickly. We met in executive session and then in a public meeting decided to implement these 2 first steps: hiring a diversity inclusion officer and then reinstituting the Superintendent's Advisory Council. I can't think of a better person in this entire corporation to lead that Superintendent's Advisory Council than you, Dr. Sears. Your work in previous Superintendent Advisory Councils has been exemplary, and we really look forward to receiving more feedback from you and from Mr. White in the future months as to what more and additional steps we can take to make sure that our district does everything it can to ensure racial justice and equality for everyone. So thank you so much for your efforts and your continuing efforts on behalf of the corporation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
This item was presented for informational purposes. We'll move on to our next instructional report. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley and Board of Trustees. This is a report about community partnerships. During the period of virtual learning, we look at all kinds of partnerships, so we try to help our parents out. We're looking at child care and such, and so it's a beginning stage. And Dr. Short has done a lot of work initially, and we will continue looking to develop more partnerships. I'll turn this over to Dr. Short.
Thank you, Dr. Thacker. Good evening, President Riley, members of the board. It is my pleasure to inform you tonight where we are so far in our investigations since last week related to community partnerships and how we might be able to better support our parents. So as always, our goal is to support our community of learners the best that we can, and that of course includes all stakeholders that we have involved. So agencies that we're currently in contact with, several of them. So we started with the Service Bureau, talked to the Croc Center, Robinson Learning Center, United Way, Early Childhood Coalition, and Logan Center, and I think there might be one more on there, Boys and Girls Club. So, and the Early Learning Connections. So, if you want to back up for just 1 second, thanks. So, when we have reached out to all of these agencies, certainly they have different components at play, and they have already been in place for a number of years in serving in certain ways. I will tell you that just like in the school system, COVID has kind of rocked their world a little bit too. So a lot of what they've always done has had to shift virtually overnight. And so they're all working through a lot of new protocols and things as well. But the great news is everyone that I have spoken with has been very supportive and, willing to put up as much they can in terms of resources for our students and our parents and our community. One thing in particular that was shared with us that has been recently updated, and we can put this on our website, we have permission. This was created by the Youth Service Bureau. They call it the St. Joe County Blue Sheet. And in this, they have a lot of information from food assistance to child care locators. YSB is listed, child abuse resources, a lot of early childhood resources, as you see on the right-hand side. So we figured this might be a great place for parents to start if they're looking for some information. And then in addition to this, as I said, we've been reaching out to different communities, and we do have a lot of information that we believe is forthcoming. Spoken to several heads of these different partnerships and community outreach centers, and all of them have shared that, within the next week or so, they hope to have some updated services and options. So a lot of really good things, I think, going in the community. I think everyone realizes that with so many school districts starting with a virtual start, there is definitely a need, and people are trying to create some resources around that need so that parents have some options. So at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have and be ready to move forward.
So specifically, the comments I'm getting a lot are, we're a home where we have two parents working. And which of these resources, the resources you're talking to, would be available to help with childcare or to help provide an educational learning experience where the curriculum that we're doing virtually at PHM would be something they could do remotely with supervision by someone skilled and trained to assist the child with the educational experience?
Right, so certainly a lot of these places have, they have created some after school. Almost all of them are trying to see what they can create during the school day now, since now there will be a lot of virtual learning happening. When I spoke to the Crocs Center and Boys and Girls Club, they actually both said that they have PHM parents that have already reached out to them. Of course, right now what they're trying to mitigate is the fact that there are so many people that are interested in fairly few spots. So if you think about it, they also have to react the way we have with a very intentionally devised plan that is 50% capacity. So even in spaces where they might be able to normally offer 50 spaces, those are now down to 25 with social distancing. So the people that I've spoken with, and United Way in particular, and Boys and Girls Club, are looking to see if there are additional spaces in the community, library spaces, community spaces, where they might be able to open additional locations and then provide some additional support that way.
So any luck with local industry help, like big businesses now? The parents work for these big businesses. So I didn't know if there was any luck for precedent from around the region of any kind of support from any local industry.
So two that we've spoken with, one certainly Robinson Center is based out of Notre Dame. Spoke with Jay Camponegro there individually, and he was sharing that they were looking to see, and of course they're also trying to support their parents, right, who have children. So looking at that, and then also we reached out to the chamber, because I think the chamber has some things that they're trying to put into place for the community. But they asked us for a little bit of patience, and they're saying hopefully early next week they might be able to have a comprehensive list that they're ready to put out.
Other questions or comments? Last week, some of the most deeply held concern that we received from parents was with the switch to virtual learning. What are we going to do with childcare? And so I sincerely hope that this is an issue that we approach creatively. I hope it's an issue that does not get shelved with any sort of temporal measures, because some of the brightest people in our community work right here in this building, and I have every faith and confidence in the administration to come up with more and additional creative techniques for helping our families in need, because as Mr. Wood said, we have many families where both parents work, many families where there's just a single parent. So this is a terrific first start. Thank you, Dr. Short, for all the time and effort you put into it. I really appreciate the presentation. And will we be making this available to the public?
Yes, as soon as we have a complete list, we can post with permission, as I said, from YSB, we can post the blue sheet, the St. John County blue sheet on our website now. But we're trying to wait until we see how to get information from the rest of the agencies related to phone numbers and contact information. Once we have that updated, we'll be able to post that.
Excellent. Excellent work. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. This presentation was for informational purposes only. So we'll move on to our next item, which is a business operational action item. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley, Board of Trustees. Mr. Hawkins and his staff just presented the 2021 budget in the work session immediately preceding the regular meeting. As the next step in this process, Mr. Hawkins must now ask the board for authorization to publish the necessary forms for the budget. Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Dr. Thacker, President Riley, members of the board. Basically, we're bringing to you the request to publish or submit the Form 3 on Gateway to make it available for the public. Ask your permission to do so.
Any questions for Mr. Hawkins? Having just heard a presentation from Mr. Hawkins during the budget work session, do I have a motion to authorize the administration to publish the legal notices for the proposed 2021 budget rates as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed vote nay. Motion carries by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you.
Dr. Thacker, on to our next business action item.
Thank you, President Riley, Board of Trustees. The St. Joseph Regional Medical Center has partnered with PHM to provide student health service to the district since 1995. We have been and continue to be very, very pleased with the quality of services offered by them. Here to present and review amendment number 15 to the School Health Services Staffing Agreement with St. Joseph Regional Medical Center's Director of Human Resources, Mr. Mike Lorman.
Good evening, President Riley, board members, Dr. Thacker. So this year has been a very interesting year for everybody. We start the year off with no COVID, we go into COVID, we go into shelter in place. And now summertime comes, it's time to start talking about, this is the first time since I've been here, we didn't have to have a summer school contract, unfortunately. So coming into the fall, so Aaron Lenski and I started meeting with St. Joe over the course of summer. Because we didn't use all of their services last year, we started the year off with a credit. And we're trying to figure out how to wisely use the credit. At that time, of course, we were planning for in-person instruction in the middle of a pandemic. And our thinking was that we certainly would need all the staffing we've had in recent years, but we also thought it'd be a good idea to use the credit to, in large part, to add a registered nurse and a health aide that would help at that time, sort of alleviate another mitigating factor for people's, understandable what's going to happen if there's a case, what happens if, we have to move people around, what about contact tracing? So we thought this would be a good way to use that to help alleviate another way of trying to mitigate whatever does come our way. So they came back in with a proposal, and Joe came back with a proposal about a month ago with that in mind, and they asked for a 3% increase. And we're adding an RN and a health aide. And under that proposal, even with those three measures, it still was less than the credit we built up for last year. So as far as new money going into the program, we still are spending about $20,000 less than last year. Still spending the money, but spending it a little bit differently. And of course, that was, and then we've also have had, Mr. Lenski and I have had conversations with St. Joe that, now that we've announced going virtually, how to best do that. We're trying to figure out what is the best way to do that. Once again, never done that before. What we do know at the beginning of every school year for the first couple of years is a really big push for student immunizations and for individual student health care plans. So we want to use them in the first couple of weeks to get that under control. And then we'll meet again and talk about, looking at how far out we're going to be. And we'll be able to take a look at we'll be able to flex the staffing based upon what the COVID situation is like. We'll have appropriate staffing based upon when and how many kids we bring in and when we bring them in. So that's our proposal. So we are asking amendment number 15 for $657,953.26 be approved at this time. Does anybody have any questions?
Or any questions or comments?
By the fact that we're on the 15th amendment to the agreement, they've provided good service to us.
Good point. Well, then, do I have a motion to approve amendment number 15 to the School Health Services Staffing Agreement with St. Joseph Regional Medical Center, South Bend Campus, Inc., to provide services to the Penn-Harris-Madison School Corporation for the 2020-2021 school year in the amount of $657,953.26 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Any opposed vote nay. Motion carries by vote of 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, very much. Moving on to our next item, which is approval of amendment number 6 to the athletic trainer services staffing agreement with St. Joseph Regional Medical Center. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley. And Board of Trustees, Mr. Lerman is going to continue with this amendment number 6 for the athletic trainer.
Okay, well, as you know, in the last year or so, we've had 2 full-time athletic trainers. It's a great benefit to us. It's a win for them too. They get to steer people in the direction of their organization, and we get 2 really good full-time trainers. And we've been talking with them for a number of years, and we built up a credit of a little over $8,000 for the same reason during shelter in place, and they were asking for a $5,000 increase. And so once again, the net new cost to us for this year will be a little bit less than last year. And they don't like us to talk about it an awful lot, but to give you an idea that we're asking for us a $38,000 cost. But the full cost of their 2 trainers is a little under $110,000. So it's a good value. It's a good win-win. We've had great experiences with the trainers we've been using. And once again, as we look out at the year, we're going to have to just sort of take it a week at a time and figure out what that needs. If we need to adjust it with our partners, we'll do that. Any questions at this time?
Questions for Mr. Lerman? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve amendment number 6 to the athletic trainer staffing agreement with the St. Joseph Regional Medical Center for the 2020-2021 school year in the amount of $38,000 as presented?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Any opposed vote nay. Motion also carries by vote of 5-0. Again, Mr. Lerman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move on to our next final business action item, Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley and Board of Trustees. We're really proud of one of our major goals, parent and community involvement. When we think about the parent and community involvement, makes that triangle, that includes students, teachers, and parents. It's really parents and community. We have all these fabulous parents, and we also have fabulous community members. And I'm delighted to be sharing with you the Dynamic Mechanical Services, PHM, and the PHM Education Foundation are proud to share a gift agreement for our most recent sponsorship and naming partnership. So one more great partner for PHM. As part of this partnership, the PHM Education Foundation will facilitate the addition of the Dynamic Mechanical Services name and brand to the press box inside TCU Freed Field. The donor commitment is for $25,000 to be paid to the Education Foundation over a 5-year period. The administration recommends approval of this gift agreement as presented.
Board members, any questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve the Dynamic Mechanical Services gift agreement with Penn-Harris-Madison Education Foundation for sponsorship of the press box inside TCU Freed Field as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed vote nay. Motion carries by a vote of 5-0. Our thanks definitely go on to Dynamic Mechanical Services for this incredible gift to the Penn-Harris-Madison Education Foundation. We'll move on to our next.
Mr. Riley, if I could, again, the Educational Foundation, the amount of money that they've raised for the school system and what they're doing with the naming rights is what a boon that's been for us working together. Name recognition, and again, I always think kind of where did this all start? And started across the aisle. There was Mr. Johnson. His leadership on the Educational Foundation has really been tremendous for us, and just would say thank you. Another annuity that we get, another 5-year annuity that we pick up. So thank you very much for your leadership.
That's a great point, Mr. Fox. Thank you for making it. Mr. Johnson's contributions to the school board are innumerable. And thank you, Mr. Johnson, for all that you're doing for us. So we'll move on to our next business operational services discussion item, Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley and Board of Trustees. This is the first reading of revisions to board policies. Mr. Ryan Snoddy, PHM's Neola associate, met with PHM Board Policy Committee on July 15th to review the current updated board policies. I'm delighted to say that I serve on this committee, and this committee includes Board Attorney Jeff Johnson, Board Policy Liaison Mr. Chris Riley, Mrs. Lucia Ramey, our Director of Communications, and Mrs. Michelle Bradbury, who's the Administrative Assistant to the Board. And then the most recent one, Mrs. Dawn Backel sat in on the meeting in the absence of Mrs. Ramey. So following the committee's review with revisions and petitions have been processed in-house to get the policies in the pre-adoption format, which is being presented to the board this evening. There's one revised bylaw and 4 revised policies scheduled for first reading this evening. These 5 bylaws and policies are the first group to undergo revisions from the most recent update. I'd like to ask Board Attorney, Mr. Jeff Johnson, to present these bylaws and policies to you. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Dr. Thacker, President Riley, and members of the board. As Dr. Thacker just indicated, there are proposed revisions to 1 bylaw and 3 existing policies and 1 new policy scheduled for first reading this evening. First is policy 0167.2, executive session. The proposed revision to this policy concerns topics that the board may consider during the executive session. The existing policy indicates one of the areas that the board can consider is the purchase or lease of real property. The proposed revision to this policy would expand the nature of the real estate transactions which the board may consider to include a purchase, a lease as the lessor or as the lessee, a transfer or sale up to the time that a contract or option are executed. Second policy is policy 5111, determination of legal settlement and eligibility for enrollment of students without legal settlement in the corporation. The proposed revision to this policy allows the board to delegate authority to the superintendent to determine when an out-of-district student will not be allowed to return to PHM. Policy 6105, authorization to accept and distribute electronic records and to use electronic signatures. This proposed revision to the policy would permit the use of electronic signatures and electronic records in accordance with Uniform Electronics Transaction Act. It's really DocuSign, you know, everyone's using that. This would permit that. The next is policy 6250, required ADM counts for purpose of state funding. This is a new policy, and it was developed in response to the State Board of Accounts requirement that each school corporation provide ADM counts for the purpose of state funding. We actually already do what this policy requires, but we have been informed that in the event of an audit, the State Board of Accounts will ask for a copy of our policy that addresses ADM counts. And if we don't have a policy, it will result in a negative comment by the State Board of Accounts, even though our practice has been and is the same as what this policy would require. So it's just putting in writing what we're already doing to avoid a negative comment from State Board of Accounts following their audits. And lastly, for tonight's policy 8330, student records. The proposed revision to this policy addresses the release of education records in health and safety emergencies in coordination and compliance with FERPA. The revision to this policy that's being proposed would add the Director of Special Ed as one of the persons that may share personally identifiable information with law enforcement, healthcare providers, and others under certain limited circumstances. Those are the policies for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Board members, any questions or comments for Mr. Johnson? Hearing none, this item was presented for discussion tonight. The board meeting that will take place on August the 24th, 2020 will include taking up these policies as an agenda item. So thank you, Mr. Johnson. We'll move right along to our next item, which is board reports and requests. Board members, do you have anything to report or request at this time?
I do, Mr. Riley.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, sir. So we were here last week, and I think Dr. Thacker described it well. We were mandated to not start the year with all in-person learning or a hybrid model, but we've had to have an all virtual solution. And the reason for that were 4 categories of metrics as determined by the St. Joseph County Health Department. Those 4 categories are new cases per day on a 7-day rolling average, active cases in St. Joseph County diagnosed in the preceding 14-day period, the percent of positivity of the test in St. Joseph County, and what they call the R0 estimate. That's a scientific estimate they use to determine, I guess, the overall ability of the contagion of the disease, as I understand it. Those numbers last week, they have red, yellow, and green categories. We had 2 in the red and 2 in the yellow. There were 47 active cases per day on a 7-day rolling average. There were 637 active cases last week in St. Joseph County. The percent of positivity was 5.4%, and the R0 estimate was 0.91. As of this morning, none of those numbers have gotten better. As we sit here today, there's 51 active cases on a 7-day rolling average. There's 710 active cases. The percent of positivity has gone up to 6%, and the R0 is up to 1.28%. So we're, once again, with 2 red categories and 2 yellow categories. And this seems to be a state trend. I think from the state numbers I observed on Friday was the most new cases in the state, and over the weekend I think it was the 3rd most. Here are my concerns right now is that COVID's here to stay, and PHM students, teachers, and staff are going to acquire COVID. We've seen that. We saw that at the end of July where we had a participant in an extracurricular test positive. Saw it last week. We had a participant in an extracurricular test positive. We saw it today as we were getting information for this meeting late this afternoon that we've had 2 more positive cases in extracurriculars. So we know we're going to have positive tests. But we also know that even with COVID, students will need to learn, and the best place to do that is in the schoolhouse if it is safe. We also know that even with COVID, students need to have extracurricular activities and sports if they are safe. What we don't know and what we need some help with is the corporation needs to develop plans that will govern how we define what is safe and what are the safe and acceptable risks for continuing activities when students, teachers, and staff test positive. The situation that we saw last week at the athletic team caused an unnecessary panic. Even though I agree with the decision that after a positive COVID test comes back with an extracurricular program, there should be a cooling off period. I was very pleased at the end of July when we had a similar situation happen with one extracurricular team, and there was a decision to let you know about it and to give a cooling off period to that program. That was a very good decision. I think if that decision would have been made as it related to the action last week, we would not have had that panic. But really the situation last week was unnecessary panic. And the best way to avoid having unnecessary panic is just to have a plan. And specifically a detailed plan that prevents inconsistent outcomes like we saw and provides a clear path for communication before decisions are made dealing with COVID-related student safety. So what I would like for the administration to do is as we work through extracurricular activities here at Penn-Harris-Madison, is I'd like for the superintendent, Mr. Aaron Lenski, who was a former athletic director here, is now our CFO, and one day is just going to be an outstanding school superintendent for some lucky corporation here in the state of Indiana. Our current athletic director and our coaches of particularly our fall sports, to work collaboratively amongst themselves and with the health department and come up with what are the plans for how are we going to respond when we have positive cases, because we know we're going to have them. As I sit here today, I think the 48-hour rule is very, very reasonable. But I would like for that also to be revisited as part of this group. And I think there's other issues, and I'm not going to tell you how to do your work, but there's things that I know like travel and overnights, and when we play on the road, and when teams come from out of state or out of town to play our teams, what type of social distancing and preventative measures have they undergone? What have their tests looked like? They had positive tests amongst their program. I think we also need a very nuanced approach. We all know there's just weird things going on in the world right now. I remember talking to Gary Fox back in March. I was driving down Lincoln Way. We both said, March Madness is canceled, and neither of us could believe it. And I sit here right now and I hear that Big Ten football and Pac-12 football may be canceled. And it's something I never thought I would see. But I think we need a nuanced approach, regardless of what the IHSA does. We need a nuanced approach as how are we going to handle things at Penn-Harris-Madison when these events arise. We've seen from some other entities, or other sports organizations have not really been as draconian as stopping all fall sports. The NCAA has identified sports as high risk and low risk. And what I really would like is for the people that know and care about our kids, our coaches. We have great coaches that love and care for our kids, to work with the administration, help us define what are the acceptable risks. When we have a positive test, what should happen? And how do we keep as many sports programs going as long as it's safe here at Penn-Harris-Madison? I think as part of that, one thing I think this group needs to work on with the health department right away is the language contained in the health department edict from a few weeks ago. In looking at participation in athletic events, it says athletics pose a different but related set of considerations. To the extent that practice settings can accommodate physical distancing and universal masking when feasible, and employ small group or cohorted practices, which I'll put a pin in here. I was very pleased that Coach Yeoman, just from looking at the emails I saw regarding this, they're doing all this stuff right. They're doing everything they can. And the health department goes on. We endorse engagement in athletics and other extracurricular activities if the majority of metrics are in the yellow or green zones as indicated above. And we just haven't been there. I know school corporation in St. Joseph County has been there. We're all practicing. So I'm not saying we stop practicing. I don't think that's the outcome. But I think that we do need to work with the health department to see what this language means and why, and get some explanation of why it's safe to continue practicing, because we based our decision not to go to school on this language and we proceed virtually. I know you've had conversations. Maybe you can answer that question for me as we sit here today, but that language still exists. As we discussed with our school corporation council, we do not have insurance coverage. We don't have penny one to cover the first COVID claim if somebody has a very adverse health reaction to COVID. We don't have money to pay attorney's fees. And we have this pending, what you call the mandate, Dr. Thacker, from the health department that says we shouldn't be doing something. I'm not the corporation attorney, but I am an attorney. And I think that that deals with the issue of foreseeability. And it doesn't seem that we have a very good argument that something wouldn't be foreseeable if the health department saying that we shouldn't do it. So we really need to work on that language and figure out why it's safe to return to athletics. Lastly, I wanted to ask you this question, Dr. Thacker. I'm just so concerned as I look at the numbers, the metrics used by St. Joseph County, that I fear that there may not be a point where we will have numbers favorable enough to return to school. Maybe that's not the case. I've heard Dr. Fox say a couple of weeks ago that these numbers start trending downward. It could be a matter of a month when we're back in school. And we all hope that. We don't want our 15% of our school funding on September 18th being subject to clawback. We certainly don't want that. But if you think it's a good idea and advisable, I think that I'd like for you and the administration to work with the health department to see if there's a way to stratify the numbers that are being presented by zip code or preferably by townships, to see what are the numbers actually in Penn-Harris-Madison townships. How many active cases have we had on a 7-day rolling average? How many active cases do we have total in Penn-Harris-Madison? What's our percent of positivity in Penn-Harris and Madison? Do you think that would be a good idea, Dr. Thacker?
I think it's a great idea. As we're looking, we really want all of our students to come back who desire to be in-person classrooms when it's safe. And I think if we could look at the data, if we could disaggregate data, and we could determine that it's a safe environment for the students, that would be fabulous for everyone. It would take care of so many issues that we have. For the parents who are looking, we're talking about child care issues, great role models, making sure that they're in school, participating in extracurricular activities, developing those soft skills, 21st century skills, teamwork, leadership, collaboration, all of those in addition to the outstanding academic opportunities. So absolutely, we will try to work with the health department and look at that data, because as has been indicated to us, sometimes there are hotspots within communities. Some areas are completely safe and some are not. And we could look at as we look at any of the tests where people are showing up with COVID, we can probably determine low risk and high risk. And we want to use a calculated risk to ensure that we have that positive, safe environment. So we will, we'll work on that. We appreciate your input. Great insight.
So I really think that we need to have a plan, Mr. Riley, and it's my comments to the board collective. We need a plan. And we need to have it fast. I mean, things are coming down so rapidly as it relates to sports and what's going on in the world right now and extracurriculars and school funding. I'm not critical of the administration. You guys have been way busy. You guys have been busy trying to figure out how to open school up. We're busy trying to figure out how to have a hybrid model when the numbers look like it might support it. So I know these things have there's not been any really extra hours in anybody's day, but I think for our students that we need to look at trying to stratify the data to see if it supports the return to school here in Penn-Harris-Madison, and also to work with our coaches and our athletic department to set the plans for what happens when we have positive tests and define that acceptable level of risk. Is it number of players, percentage of players? And I think that if you guys can work together on that, we'll have a much better outcome for our student athletes in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Anybody else? Then we will move on to the next item of our agenda, which is hearing of the visitors. I understand that we have some visitors here in the boardroom, maybe some visitors who have joined us outside the boardroom, and I know that we have some visitors who are joining in by our live feed who would love to address the board. And let me read this before we open up the hearing of visitors. At regular board meetings, the public is invited to address the board on general topics and the hearing of visitors without registering. A time limit of 3 minutes shall be enforced for persons wishing to speak during the hearing of visitors. Board Attorney Jeff Johnson will keep time and let you know when your 3 minutes have expired. It is requested that names and addresses be stated at the beginning of such comments. Individuals may speak only once during this section of the agenda. Personnel issues are not to be addressed during open sessions of the board. Concerns about individual employees in the district should be brought to the superintendent or his designee. The board does not respond to questions or comments posed during the hearing of visitors. So here's how we'll go about this procedurally. We'll have anybody who's here in the boardroom or just outside the boardroom come in first, and then we will hear from our online guests. Good evening, sir. Come on up.
All right.
The podium is all yours.
All right.
Tell us your name and address, and away
My
you go.
name's Andy Lauer, and I live at 13701 Woodhaven Drive, 3 separate words. I have 3 students here at school, senior on the football team, junior in the arts department, and then an 8th grader over at Discovery Middle School. Let me look at my notes here. I wasn't expecting to speak tonight because I was just thinking we were here for a rally, so I apologize I'm not dressed appropriately, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me. I know this is a difficult job for you, that you guys have very difficult decisions to make, so I want to say from the beginning that I appreciate that you guys have been doing that and doing the work for that, so thank you for doing that. I'm a pastor here locally. I'm a pastor at South Bend First Church of the Nazarene. I've been there for 8 years. And so love this community, love the school, very glad to be a part of it. And so I wasn't able to be here last week when you guys were meeting and when you were making decisions about reopening school or starting in person and all that. I was in Kentucky at a mission called Appalachia Outreach. And it's a mission to Martin County, which President Johnson visited back in the 60s. I remember that. So this is one of the poorest counties in the entire country. And one of the things that the leader of that organization shared with me personally, we spent 5 days together, is how important it is for the kids to be in the schools because of the needs that they face, because of the ministry, if you will, of education they provide, the meals, the fellowship, the relationships, all those kinds of things that come with being a part of a school, and how they're working really hard to get the kids back in school. So we were there actually painting in the schools. They don't have the resources to do a lot of that. We were there painting and cleaning, trying to get things ready for them to return to school if they were able to. So I know how important it is for kids to be there and how they're suffering if they can't do that. And so I wanted to speak tonight just about encouraging us, encouraging you, encouraging Penn-Harris-Madison School Corporation to be, we have an opportunity to be courageous leaders, I think, to be leaders to other school districts, to be leaders in our county, thank you, to be leaders in the community as we make these decisions going forward. So to think about being courageous in that way, to think about we get to lead and be on the forefront of that, just the way PHM leads in academics, leads in athletics. Let's lead in this COVID time. And I'm thinking about the students that are in athletics. So thinking about my son who's a senior and the other seniors, it's an opportunity for them. They have to face adversity on the field, right? So this is a chance for us and for you as leaders to make decisions facing adversity, to move forward with courage, to move forward with boldness, not in fear. We have data. Data can be manipulated. Let's move forward with boldness. Let's move forward with courage. Let's keep the kids and their families who are willing to accept the risk. I mean, we can do waivers or whatever. Allow them to accept the risks like we all accept risks every day in life. So thanks for letting me speak for a couple minutes. Normally I preach for 35 minutes, but I don't think we're going to go that long tonight. So thanks for having me here. I appreciate what you're doing. Let's be bold and let's be courageous as we move forward, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Lauer, very much. Mr. Lauer, before you go,
Yes.
this is a housekeeping matter. Your name appeared on a list of individuals given to me who had asked to address the board by video conference. So had you signed that?
I had sent an email. I just saw that if we wanted to speak, we had to send an email. So I was probably just unaware of exactly.
I just want to make sure I counted for everybody who wanted to speak.
So it wasn't the same name. Got it. Thank you.
You'll get a second chance.
Yeah, I want to jump on that. All right.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Sorry, you don't mind if I take this? I don't think I can speak through it, but Jeff Jankowski, address 15485 Sienna Court. Thanks for the opportunity to address the board. I'm glad the football team will be resuming practice tomorrow. I came here tonight to explain why I support the football team being able to practice and complete their season, no matter how many tests may be positive. These boys have been preparing for this since the spring sports were canceled and school moved to online. Official practice didn't start until July, but I know a majority of the boys found ways to get stronger and faster during the time off. They worked hard. It's been one thing to keep them motivated and as upbeat as possible during this unprecedented time. We support their hard work. We support what football means to their lives. However, I think playing football this season is bigger than just football. I often like to think in terms of timeless truths. I would define that as something that is most true for the most people for the most time. One of those truths would be that freedom is always better than the alternative. My younger sister is adopted. In certain countries, she would not have been allowed to live. I'm thankful that her birth mother had the freedom to make the choice that she did. Time won't allow for more examples, but I think it would be difficult to counter the argument that freedom is better than the alternative. For a long time now, the last few decades of my life, it's become too common for small groups of people to take choices away from larger groups. During this pandemic, unfortunately, that has only gotten worse. We've started down a slippery slope, and I hope we can pump the brakes. Number two, bravery is superior to fear. Is there a risk to have football? Of course, but everyone has weighed those risks for their student athletes and their families. I'll go so far to say that bravery saves more lives than fear. We have had tragic school shootings over the last decade or so, which has caused school districts across the nation to put in more security measures. There's generally agreement on those measures. But when the shooting happens anyway, many times it's the bravery of a teacher or a coach who tackles the offender and prevents more loss of life. When a building is on fire, the smoke alarms are designed to help people get out before anything happens to them. But the fireman running in to save someone who couldn't get out is bravery saving lives. I'll finish with a real-life example of what I think summarizes my sentiment. My daughter got married just a few weeks ago. We invited about 300 people. Each of those people and family units had to weigh the risks and reward for themselves. The 100 of those people decided they didn't want to attend. 200 decided they wanted to attend. One attendant was my almost 96-year-old father-in-law. Of course, to not see his oldest granddaughter get married would be a difficult decision, but he's almost 96. The wedding was a huge success and a perfect moment of beauty and love during a difficult time. But I had to ask Ed a few days later, obviously you wouldn't want to miss the wedding, but what level of fear did you have going in being there with so many people? He didn't hesitate, none. Well, of course not. He lived through the Great Depression, served in World War II as a Navy officer, and I think, I have 2 more sentences, sure. I think he learned early on that real life doesn't reward living in fear. What a role model. I want to be that kind of role model for my kids, just like my dad if he sees this. Football players are not necessarily fearless, but they have to stare fear in the eye all the time and determine that they will be brave.
Thank you,
Go Penn.
Mr. Jan. Go Penn. Thank you, Mr. Jankowski, very much.
Emma got married.
Yeah.
Congratulations to her and you and Clary. That's awesome. I see her running down towards from Bethel towards my office some days. Still recognize her running for me. It's good seeing you. Congratulations.
Welcome, sir. Come on up.
Thank you. Board and Dr. Thacker, thank you. My name is Kevin Goralchuk. I live at 596007 Court in South Bend.
Will you repeat your last name?
Goralczk, Goralchuk. I live at 59600 in South Bend. I hadn't planned on coming into the meeting tonight to speak, but I figured since the weather was so bad, I might as well come out and make an appearance. First of all, I want to commend Dr. Thacker and the administration of Penn High School, as well as the school board. I think that every decision that gets made is extremely, extremely difficult in schools, especially these days. And I want to support all of you with all of the work that you're doing because it's incredibly difficult. I listened to Mr. Woods as he spoke. It's probably the most sense I've heard anybody involved in the school board or anywhere recently to come up with a plan. Penn High School and Penn-Harris-Madison School Corporation separates itself from everybody else in the area and the state. It's more than sports. It's more than athletics. It's more than academics. It's an institution. It's an attitude. It is what you are. People come to this area and want to live from Granger to Bremen. Penn is a very famous Indiana school district because of everybody in this room and because of everybody at that high school. I have 2 children. One's a junior. One's going to be in the 6th grade at Grissom Middle School. She's starting out her year, and it's like, wow, what's going on, Dad? I said, well, it'll be all right, kiddo. We'll get your stuff tomorrow. My son's heartbroken, obviously, for football. Just come up with a plan that's feasible. I heard someone say down around the Indianapolis area that they just shut it down. Well, that meant to me back in July that they didn't have a plan. The plan was when something went south, they just shut it down. We're better than that. I know we are. I know the people in this room will figure it out. If I could be of any help or assistance to anybody in this room, please let me know. But I would just urge everybody to let the kids be and represent all of us in whatever activity they choose to do this fall, this spring. It's extremely difficult. I do not envy any of you, but I do appreciate all of you. Thank you for this opportunity. And I know that this board, our superintendent, our school administrators will do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Very well said. Thank you, Mr. Goralchuk.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Riley, we have a group of students. Would you like them one at a time, or would you like them to come as a group? They would all like to speak, so if you want one at a time.
To the extent that we can maintain the social distancing protocols that we have to observe. Hello? Hello?
guys. I just wanted to thank all of you on just letting us in here and giving us the opportunity to speak and just on behalf.
This is Kyle Riffle, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm Kyle Riffle, Zach Messer, Cole McCullough, and Oscar Lauer. We're all seniors on the Titan football team, and we just wanted to thank you and giving us this opportunity to speak and represent our football team, our community, our brotherhood, and just our family as a whole. The opportunity that football has given us just to become a brotherhood and one as a whole is just unlike anything else. And if that's taken away from us, if that field's taken away from us, there's nothing else really that we can bond over other than that sport and that opportunity and just representing Penn High School, representing the community, and representing everyone that we can get through indifference and that we can get through anything if we set our mind to it.
Yeah, what he's saying is what goes on the football field is a lot bigger than just the sport. Like what Coach Corey teaches us out there is like how to be men, like how to have respect for each other and other people. Like we have respect for like the rules that you guys put in place and we follow them to the best of our ability.
We hope going on, whatever you guys decide is the best action, we want to follow that and do anything we can to have our season. Whether it means getting tested for games or whatever you guys decide, we want to be with you guys on that decision.
Yeah, I think football just really incentivizes us to be safe in and out of school and just day in and day out, we're always making good decisions because we all really want a season. I know you guys really are pushing for that too. So we're all really pushing for that. So yeah, it's just more than a sport, and we'll do anything to keep playing this game. So
Thank you again for the opportunity to let us speak. You know what, actually, guys, thank you. Thank you, and thank you to all the other students who are outside our door and who may come in and speak to us also. I can't tell you how encouraging it is to sit here right in this seat and to see Penn High School student athletes come in and address us. You know, this is exactly the right way to effectuate change throughout your lives as you go to the people who are in power and petition on behalf of what you feel strongly about. We're really proud of you.
Thank you.
You guys give us goosebumps. And you're the reason why we sit here. I just want you to know that. I may have a few things to say about the football season, but I'm going to reserve my comments until after all of our student athletes have had an opportunity to speak. So thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thankful for your leadership. Get out here.
That's, I didn't hear her. I think we're good out there. Okay. Okay, so all of the individuals who are here in the ESC who wanted to speak have spoken to the board. So now we'll flip over to our guests who are joining us by our live feed. And I understand that we have Todd Buckley who would like to speak to the board.
I do not have Mr. Buckley requesting to join the meeting at this time.
Okay, Mr. Buckley, if you're still joining us by the live feed, I'll hold on. I'll come back to you after I go to our next individual. And so please join back up on the live feed and let us know that you'd like to ask your question. Next individual I have on my list who'd like to ask a question by the live feed is Kyle Roberts.
You guys hear me?
We can hear you great, sir.
How you guys doing tonight? Thank you for the time to speak. So my kids just started with your school last year in kindergarten. They're going to be in first grade this year. They're very disappointed not being able to go to school, see their friends, see their teachers. Very disappointed. And honestly, I'm very disappointed in the school board because the county next to us that was the hottest spot in Indiana just 3 weeks ago is going in class. And they get to play sports. So the county that had overwhelming hospitals, you know, Elkhart, Goshen, everybody overwhelmed. They get to go to in class while we're not. And Elkhart County cases are over 1,000 more than us, and they're going to in class. Today, the NCAA, Big Ten, announces they're canceling football. Now, I love sports, huge sports fan, but and I feel for these seniors and I feel for these these kids. But if we can play sports, we should be able to go to school. there's no doubt that we should be in class if we can play sports. If we can trade blood, sweat, and tears on a football field, then we can sit in a sanitized classroom. And, we keep talking about flattening the curve. What is it now? Like, numbers aren't as bad as they had talked about. The second wave isn't as bad as they talked about. When is flattening the curve going to be just, let's see what we can do? So from here, I want you guys and encourage you guys to take a look at least try going back to school, getting a plan. The plan for my kids is, luckily my daycare extended their summer program, or I would have probably had to quit my job to watch my kids, because every daycare around here is open 7 to 5. I work construction. I wish I had those hours. I work 6 a.m. till I hope to be off by 5 o'clock in the evening. My wife, she works most of the time 5 a.m. till 3:30, 4 o'clock. She works at a hospital. She doesn't get luxury hours. So, those daycares were great, but they don't work for my family. We both work. We both have to work in our community to bring home, support our household. So, it doesn't work for us. I appreciate you guys, and I know you guys have tough decisions, and you guys have to, you know what I mean. But for us and working families, it stinks having to do this. So I want to thank you guys and look forward to your decision.
Mr. Roberts, thank you so much for your comments and for joining us online tonight. We'll go back to Mr. Todd Buckley. Mr. Buckley, are you with us?
Yes, I'm logging Mr. Buckley.
Mr. Buckley, understand that we're logging you in, so stay with us.
Mr. Buckley, you'll need to unmute your microphone.
Sorry. Do you have me now?
I think we can hear you, Mr. Buckley. Go ahead.
Okay, you got me now? Thank you. Thanks for allowing me a couple of minutes. Sorry I couldn't get connected earlier there. I apologize. So just going a little bit later, there's been a lot of points that I kind of wanted to make, but I won't rehash those. I'm just going to kind of make a general statement that I was hoping to make. I really feel a leader is somebody who inspires and help others, reach their full potential. And I think right now these kids just need leadership. These kids need their teachers. They need their coaches. These kids, these coaches, they're voluntarily choosing to come out and participate in an activity they love. This is more about just the extracurricular activity. These kids haven't had structures for months. This is needed. Going back into the classroom in a school and having activities to participate for these kids and these coaches who are voluntarily choosing to do this. It's just a shred of normalcy for their well-being and their mental health. We need to consider protecting these kids' mental health. It's a critical issue. I mean, it's everywhere. To those that are living in circumstances that are not, necessarily the best, this may be all they have, these extracurricular activities in school, and provide them something that opens doors for them. I'm sure you've all participated in extracurricular activities while you were in school. I mean, we all know there's more to it than just the sport or the club. There's the camaraderie. You learn life lessons. We've seen summer sports across the country. They've figured out a way to come together and safely and responsibly have activities. We're naive to think there's not going to be a positive case. But as somebody mentioned earlier, it's the protocols that are put in place. We have to trust these coaches to make the right decisions for our kids. These kids genuinely care about our kids. They love our kids. I mean, the tears I saw on Friday night were just something I didn't think I'd ever see from coaches. We got to give protocols a chance to work. If you don't, these kids are going to go somewhere else. They're going to find somewhere else to play. It's just the fact of the matter. You sent out a survey to our families asking if we wanted to send our kids back to school. Overwhelmingly, I think over 70% of the families responded. They wanted to go back to school. And we feel we were not heard. So why do the survey? I mean, the recommendation from Dr. Fox and his power trip at the health department, it's a recommendation. We can make our own decisions. As it was mentioned earlier, let's look at the townships for Penn-Harris-Madison. Please listen to us now. We want our kids to go back to school. We want them to have extracurricular activities. It's our choice to do this. Just think about the whole kids' livelihoods. They need stability. We all need to be part of the solution. We need to help walk them through this. We don't need to create and escalate anxiety. We can't do fear.
Buckley, I doubt you can hear our board attorney, but your 3 minutes are up, and we thank you so much for staying online with us and addressing the board. We really appreciate your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anybody else who's joining us through the live feed who would like to address the board?
I have no one else who wants to speak on it.
Okay, we'll move on to the next.
Mr. Riley, I know you may have some conclusory comments, but I'll ask a few questions of Dr. Thacker, if that's okay. So I didn't give you a chance to respond because we got to the people that are important speaking. On the continuing of athletics, when we have 2 red and 2 yellow categories, which isn't a majority in green and yellow, has there been communication with the health department? There's been some type of tacit acquiescence by the health department. That's okay, right? Is that fair? I'm just trying to figure out why corporations throughout St. Joe County are doing it.
I have a hunch that when they're looking at when we're talking, I'm speaking not really for the health department, but I'm trying to think analytically while you were talking about planning.
I'm not asking you to speculate. I'm asking you to let you know based on conversations with MLP. While 10 athletes are out, when there's 2 red and 2 yellow categories.
When we had conversations, it was indicated to us that because of the ability to social distance, to put them in their pods or in their different groups, that they would be safe enough to play.
Okay, so despite their guidance, they said, go ahead, boys.
Yes.
Women, have at your sports, right?
Yes.
I think that's all well and good. We need something in writing from the health department that says that's what the standard is, because the standard to a plaintiff's attorney or to the outside world is that we shouldn't be doing it. And we don't want to get sued if there was some adverse health impact upon students. Okay, that was question 1. Question 2. We were here on August 3rd. We discussed teachers and administrators working with the health department on what happens if we have a positive test in the high school. And I think this health or the extracurriculars goes along with that. Has there been any progress made on that, or is that something you're trying to work collaboratively on at this time as it relates to what happens when there's a positive test in the classroom?
We're at the beginning stages. We have not defined exactly what would occur. Okay, we do have a lot of examples, and we have some recommendations from our specific health department, but from the state health organizations, when a person is tested, for example, if we were 2 students who were working together and we were like lab partners or something, if I were tested positive, then she would also, I would be quarantined, she would be quarantined. Not necessarily as we look out in here in the rest of this classroom, because you weren't exposed to us, and you would not necessarily have to be quarantined. So some of the advice that we're getting would be, we don't have to close everything. What we have to do is identify transmitting it. So make sure who has it and who would most likely be transmitting it. So we're gone for 14 days, and then the other people could continue.
Okay. So the answer to the question is you're in the early stages of trying to collaborate with our Teachers Association as to developing what the plan is when we have positive tests in school, when we bring students back, right?
And Mr. Woods, I can add to that. We have a roundtable set up for this Friday with the PHMTA. We've invited the St. Joe County Health Department. They have not responded back. We reached out immediately after last week's board.
And that's why you'll be a fine superintendent. Thank you, Mr. Winston. Last question. I don't know what the message was that was carried to the players and coaches of Penn football, but to a person, I think what was told of every member of this school board is this on Friday, this was going to be a 48-hour cooling off period. If there's a school board member that was told something else, I'd like to know it, because that's what we understood. So I don't know how we got from that message to we're looking to cancel the football season, but that's not what was told board members, and no board member wanted that.
Oh, I know that for a fact. Okay, I don't know how the message was, I don't know how anything was interpreted to cancel the football season. The only message that I conveyed to anyone was that we were putting a pause on the program. And I'll put this in context. I'd like to commend the football coaches, the athletic administration, all the coaches, because we had 2 cases of COVID, 2 positive tests with over 1,000 students on the campus. So we're all proud of that, and we all contributed in the planning of that. So when we had 1 test, but what we knew was that as the metrics are looking unfavorable in St. Joseph County, and we thought, okay, look, we want our football program to be able to continue. How do we ensure that we revisit, put it on pause, take a look at the program to see what we can do to prevent any further spread of coronavirus? And that was the message. And in fact, that's the message that I've shared with during the 3 different interviews. And so it's been consistent. We've had that. So I don't know where that would have materialized, but I know that from all of you, we all said consistently, the board and administration support the football program. And so we're taking a 48-hour period to take a look at what we can do. And that's what that was the message.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm.
On that note, that's partially why I'm so proud of our student athletes who came here tonight. You come right to the source to get the information on where the school board stands. I told you I wanted to make a couple remarks about where we stand relative to the upcoming football season, and I'd like to do that now. The 7 board members and superintendent that are sitting at this table rank among your greatest fans. And we have every reason to want to have the Penn football season proceed as planned. We have to do with football as we do with everything. We have to evaluate safety and health first. To the extent that the Penn football season can proceed as planned and we can keep you safe and we can keep you healthy, we're all behind it. So I'm glad that you came here tonight. You can hear directly from us what our commitment to you is. And with that having said, we're going to move on now to the next item on our agenda, which is the announcements.
I lied. I got one more thing. How much time do y'all need to get that committee together, working with our coaches, athletic department, and others to try to get us a plan? When can something be presented to the board so the community and players and parents and everybody knows we're obviously going to have to make some decisions on the go, but here's our plan.
So we'll begin working on that promptly.
When do you think you can bring something to us?
So I'd like to begin working on it this week.
When do you think you can bring something to us?
I would hope that we could have something, at least a preliminary draft of something within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
The first teacher day for the 2020-2021 school year will be Monday, August the 17th, 2020. The first day of the 2020-2021 school year for students in grades 1 through 12 is Wednesday, August the 19th. Students will attend in an all virtual format to start this year. Kindergarten students' first day will be August the 20th. The next regular meeting of the Penn-Harris-Madison Board of School Trustees will convene on Monday, August the 24th here at the Educational Services Center. Now we'll move on to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's regular meeting of the Penn-Harris-Madison Board of School Trustees?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Any opposed vote nay? Meeting is adjourned at 8:41 PM.